And to India now, where US Vice President JD Vance has welcomed the prospect of closer ties between Washington and Delhi. Vance is on a 4-day visit to India and has held talks with the country's Prime Minister Narendra Modi. India is hoping to clinch a new trade deal as it looks to avoid American tariffs.
A family visit to India's historic Amber Fort. Most tourists aren't treated as such a spectacular welcome. But India has plenty of reasons to roll out the red carpet to US Vice President JD Vance, his wife Usha, the daughter of Indian immigrants, and their 3 children. Although this trip has been billed as mostly personal, there's business to discuss.
We want to work together more, and we want your nation to buy more of our military equipment, which of course we believe is the best in class. Americans want further access to Indian markets. This is a great place to do business, and we want to give our people more access to this country. And Indians, we believe, will thrive from greater commerce in the United States.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi earlier welcomed the Vance family at his private residence. It's only weeks since the US threatened India with tariffs of 27%, now temporarily reduced to 10%. But unlike its neighbour China, India has raced to the negotiating table.
The advantage that India has, compared to many other countries, is that it has a commitment from the Trump administration to launch talks. I mean, there's a commitment that came when Prime Minister Modi met President Trump in Washington back in February. At that point, they agreed to pursue a trade deal. And so those are talks that will begin very soon with the goal of reaching a deal by the fall.
India has already handed the US plenty of gifts ahead of the negotiations, agreeing to buy more US oil and defense equipment and receive deported migrants. Modi is hoping for something in return, a potential doubling of their trade to $500 billion within a few years. Now it's time for the adults in the room to sit down and agree on a deal.
Pant is the Vice President of the Observer Research Foundation in Delhi. I asked him earlier about the progress made between the US and India in agreeing a new trade deal.
I think the two officials from the two countries have been continuously engaged ever since Prime Minister Modi went to the US earlier this year. And Prime Minister Modi and President Trump carved out a joint statement which has been very ambitious in its scope because India is trying to get to a bilateral trade agreement very soon compared to some of the other efforts that it has put in the past. So it's a very ambitious exercise that India is undertaking at a time of great complexity, global economic challenges, and its own internal economic challenges. But I think it's an exercise that India feels is important, not only in some ways to re-engage America on the new terms that the Trump administration has established, but also to ensure that India benefits from whatever is happening at the global economic level, particularly as the US looks at China as an economic challenger.
How big is the pressure, you think, on India to get this deal done before the 90-day pause on US tariffs expires?
I think the wider canvas that India is trying to engage with the US, as your report pointed out, that's much wide, because that's defense, there is energy, there is trade, and there is wider issue of immigration. So there are a bouquet of issues on the table which India wants the US to engage with. And there is certainly the pressure that the earlier the deal is sorted out, the better it would be for the predictability of the relationship, and the stability of the relationship, which I think India values very much, because across different administrations in the US, India-US relationship has grown in the last few decades, and India doesn't want to lose that momentum.
Is that the reason that India is getting this rather special treatment from the US, unlike other countries?
I think that's one reason, and particularly I think as the US looks at Indo-Pacific as the center of gravity of global politics and economics, and at China as its main rival, it also looks at India as a very important partner in that very important geography. So I think certainly behind that, what you call the special treatment, there is some degree of anticipation that India perhaps would continue to grow its ties with the US in the hope that the balance of power that is shaping up in the Indo-Pacific can serve the interests of both Washington and New Delhi.
Pant there from the Observer Research Foundation, speaking to us from Delhi. Thank you very much for sharing your expertise with us.